This is the episode where I have the unique discovery of and telling everybody that Sherlock Holmes is incredible. In case you haven't heard, this work of classic literature is stunning.
The most adapted work in literary history.
I know it's bold to say, but man, Sherlock Holmes is good, guys. It's really good. The entire time I was writing my notes for this, I was like, is this dumb? Like, duh, Sherlock is good. What do I have to contribute here?
I mean, we did that about Zeppelin a month ago.
And Tolkien, I suppose. But also, we just got back from a trip. But right before we left, we did a quick trip to Barnes & Noble. And I was like, you know what? I've never read Sherlock Holmes. Maybe I should read it. Because I've been in a weird reading slump because, wouldn't you know, wedding planning is horrible. And I was...
Who got married?
And I was so anxious and couldn't... it was not a good time for me. The wedding itself was great and I would marry you all over again. But I would not plan...
Me or the listener?
The listener, obviously. I would never plan a wedding ever again because that was the worst thing ever.
Sure.
Even though I had a great support system. Anyway, so... I haven't read a book except for Tolkien in months, many months.
Yeah.
And last year I read 25 books. I was which isn't a lot for some people, but is considerable. And so I was like, what am I supposed to read? I have these books that I'm one chapter into and I don't know what to do. And I found this really cute copy of The Hound of the Baskervilles. And I was like, sure, this is short. It looks fun. I'll bring it. And I read almost the whole thing. I had 2 chapters left that I finished the second I got home. And wow, it was such a delight. So that's what we're talking about today. Just some little background. So The Hound of the Baskervilles was originally published as a series, which is, I think a lot of the Sherlock Holmes stuff was in magazines and stuff, which
serialized.
Is how, it was published in 1902, which I'm dumb. I thought Sherlock Holmes was more 1880. More of a Victorian situation. I didn't realize it was Edwardian.
Well, Arthur Conan Doyle got the idea. He was at home watching CSI and he thought, this would be more fun if you could read it and you didn't have to watch it. And
if men were wearing top hats.
Yes.
Anyway, I didn't realize it was, I thought it was a bit earlier than that. So that's exciting. But anyway, it was published in 1902 and this is number 3 of 4 Sherlock Holmes novels. But it really does not matter what order. I'm as long as you know who Sherlock Holmes is and who Watson is, and I guess who Lestrade is, you're fine.
But there were... What was it, 60, 70 short stories?
Yeah, it's...
most of the series is shorter mysteries,
and it,
right?
it does not at all matter, at least as far as I'm aware, what order you read things in. Maybe if I'd read some of the earlier ones, I would catch some little references, but no, it's very much standalone. It's just... It's a procedural, when you're watching a TV show. You can hop in at any time with that kind of thing.
The ultimate and accessible art.
Yes. Well, that's the whole thing about this, is that this is an incredibly accessible book for a work of classic literature.
Yeah,
because
sure.
you think of classics, and you're oh, those are hard to read. It's a lot of complex language. And this thing wasn't written last year, but it's for classic. It's for a classic. Oh my God. For a classic, it is very accessible and pretty easy to read. And it was perfect for my reading slump. That's kind of my whole point about this is I haven't read anything in a long time, but this was good because it was the right amount of it was fast paced and fairly easy to read, but it still had because I'm an asshole, it still had the old timey prestige and distinction of classic literature. So I didn't feel like a big dummy who forgot how to read. I was I'm reading classic literature. I'm smart, which is such a dick move.
Sure.
That's what I did in my brain to make it work, and it worked.
Aesthetics are important.
Yes, and also just it's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Sherlock is an incredibly funny character.
See, I always wondered if they added that in the movies, because I love the Robert Downey Jr. movies. I think they're pretty perfect, both of them. Obviously, the Cumberbatch Sherlock show is great.
Yes,
but
is.
I have more of a fondness for the Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
Is that kind of funniness and speed and snark, is that in the books?
Very much so. I think, and this is only from one book, but my interpretation of this is that the Robert Downey Jr. adaptation, him as that character, is perfect. I don't think Jude Law is great as Watson. I mean, I think the character that Jude Law is playing is really good and is done really well.
He's great in the movie, is not a great version of the book.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think the Martin Freeman Watson in the modern Sherlock is much better.
Do you think Robert Downey Jr. and Martin Freeman could go well together if you spliced it?
I think that could be fun.
Think they'd have chemistry?
Yeah, no, I think so. The thing about Watson, at least again, only in this book, I haven't read the others. Watson's pretty bland as a character. The story is told from his perspective, which I wasn't expecting, and I thought was really fun. But as a result, you don't learn a lot about him. He's very much observing the world around him. Like, and all of his character traits are connected to Sherlock. It's like he wants to impress Sherlock. He really cares about Sherlock. He wants to be smart for him. But there's not a whole lot to Watson as a character.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
So Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, and of course I met, and he gave me a fake arm.
Yes, the severed arm.
A severed arm with his name written on it. And made me take some great pictures with him dressed like a pretty princess.
You should post those on Instagram.
I'll throw those on Instagram.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. Obviously, he's an amazing writer, and he has a great book about writing. But I'm on his, he has a Substack, so you can get on his email list. And he's serializing a novel on there, which is kosher to what you just talked about. But he also sends out just these little like pinpricks about writing. And the one I read the other day, I was waiting for you in a store, and I read that email, and it was about apostle fiction, or it was like, turn that into an adjective, it was like apostolic.
Okay.
Whatever form that is as, a descriptor.
What is that?
Apostle fiction. He was talking about Great Gatsby as sort of the go-to of a book that is written from the perspective of a character just adjacent to the hero of the story. He was talking about Nick Carraway and the relationship to Gatsby, and how you get a really interesting perspective on the lead character when you're not in their mind. He said, like, when you finish the book, Gatsby is a really flawed character, but Nick Carraway's like idolatry of him, you almost believe some of the myth, and you factor that into your characterization of him, and you get a really fun perspective. And he was saying that's a good piece of advice for writers.
Oh yeah.
And of course that's
totally present here.
That was popularized maybe in this.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what's happening here. And if you think about it, that's only a 20-year difference.
Apostle meaning like the follower,
Yes, of course. But just between Great Gatsby and this, it's just a 20-year difference.
Sure.
So that it makes which is weird.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like in my head, Sherlock Holmes was like proper Victorian. It was like 1870 to 1880.
Well, we were watching a little Downton Abbey earlier today and realized that Downton Abbey and Peaky Blinders cross
Same
over.
time. I know. Wild.
Which is such a tonal difference.
Confusing. Yeah. Anyway, no, that's a really great point. Yeah, because you are not from the perspective of Sherlock, and I wasn't anticipating that. I thought it was just going to be a neutral third person. But Watson totally idolizes him. Yeah. And he is very he admires him and wants to impress him. He doesn't just fully he's not a full brown noser, but he still you get that idolization of him. It's really interesting.
Palahniuk's point was that makes you think that the person worshiping this lead, it makes you like them. It makes them likable because they're showing such affection for someone else. Yeah. So it's like a two birds. It's an efficient form of storytelling.
Totally, yeah. And there's a whole section of the book where Sherlock is not there. Watson goes off on his own, and Sherlock is just absent. And Watson's trying to keep Sherlock up to date on what's going on, but he's not there, which is really interesting. But the whole book was such a delight. It was so much fun, and it's cool because it's a fun mystery, but it's also very gothic because it's the Hound of the Baskervilles is it's about this old family in this old manor with this old legend about this terrible curse of this hound that's gonna kill everybody, and it takes place out on this moor out in Devonshire, wherever that is. I don't know. It reminded me of Scotland. So I guess I could have looked up where Devonshire is, but I didn't. I'm assuming it's near Scotland or something like that.
It's a small country.
But
it's all near Scotland.
It felt very Wuthering Heights. That's really the vibe that it gave me, which I think is very fun. And it was so dark and twisty and lots of cool characters, and it was a lot of fun.
If we have any British listeners, email in and correct Maggie on geography.
Yeah, because
secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com.
I haven't got a clue. I don't know shit about English geography.
secondbreakfastpod on Instagram.
That is right. Thank you for throwing those in. And
now at the end of the episode, when you say we have to do the plugs,
and I'll say
remember this moment.
And I'll say roll the tape. I don't recall. I will say it took me about a third of the way into the book to feel like I was really in it.
Sure.
But I think that was a me problem and not a book problem, because it was oh yeah, what's it like to read a book? I can't remember.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah, you haven't read a real book in forever. You just read picture books for baby.
I read about 1,000 comics on the.
You did. You read so much
on the legally unnamed vacation that immediately followed the wedding.
This is a great segue because now I can talk about people trashing different genres.
I mean, honestly, I have forgotten. I mean, I read Tolkien, but that's like, it's a close reading. It's kind of different.
Yeah.
I was talking to Tristan about this, friend of the show, occasional co-host,
Yes.
Hero of our lives, Tristan.
Best man at your wedding.
Oh, actually, we should officially unban him from the podcast since
Was
he
he
did
banned?
listen to that one and he was sad. Yes, I banned him forever a couple episodes ago.
I don't recall.
I am a benevolent king, so I will relax that. I was talking to him about this, and I said, I haven't read a book in a while. I read Tolkien every week, and that kind of fools my brain.
Yeah.
But comics kind of got me back into reading.
Yeah.
And because I don't fall asleep when I read them. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think it's just the overstimulation of the world, but I don't read books much anymore.
A lot of people don't.
And I asked him, and he's the exact same way.
Yeah.
And we're both, huge into books, and we read,
Yeah.
and we're educated and cultured, and blah, 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 and we don't read books. So
Yeah.
you are not alone in that, and I'm sure people listening feel the same way.
Yeah, and I know that's just a problem among just with general, like with the way media is now. Like media is, I mean, watching a movie is most of the time more fun than reading a book. And like TikTok has destroyed our brains, including my own. And and I don't even use TikTok, I use Instagram, but it's the same problem.
And there are advantages to different mediums. I mean, we talked about video games. The industry is twice the size of Hollywood because being part of the story and immersed in it and to feel threatened and involved and intimate with it, that has an advantage in this day and age. I don't think there's any shame in any of that.
Oh, exactly. Now, that being said, if you want to get back into reading, this is a great way to do it. It's a good gateway drug because, I said, also, this book was very short. It was like 175 pages.
Perfect.
Chapters were really short, which fools my dumb brain into thinking I'm reading it faster. Because you're like, oh, I'm making progress. We're doing good.
My version of Lord of the Rings is all of the books in one. So it's a 6,000-page tome that I have to drag to my desk every week.
It was a terrible idea. I bought the individual volumes. Or books, whatever.
It does make me feel like an old wizened scholar every week. It's kind of nice.
Sure. But no, I mean, what I was going to talk about was the genre itself. Like, it's a mystery, obviously. And the mystery thriller genre now is so, for lack of a more intelligent term, shit on. The same way that romance is shit on, and even like horror, because it's not like high art, it's not literary fiction, and it's not like about anything that matters or is real, and it's like cheap. And I think we've all felt like that at some point in our lives when we like didn't understand the world. And I think I've even made fun of romance on the podcast. I do genuinely love the romance genre. I think I should point that out. Now, if we're talking about talking about these genres as a whole, and we're talking about like really good, like objectively like good artful writing, it's not as present in something like romance or thrillers, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
No,
here's the thing.
At all. Yeah.
This, like, Sherlock Holmes is a cheap mystery.
Yep.
Like it's twisty and it's designed to make you keep reading.
It's entertainment.
And it's entertainment. But we don't look at it like that because it's classic literature, because it was written a long time ago and it has big words in it.
Which completely ignores the context in which it was created. We talk about this with Shakespeare too. Shakespeare has nothing in common with opera. It is, when I think of Shakespeare, it is not something that only Wall Street billionaires go to in their hoity-toity tuxes. Yeah. Shakespeare was the most lowbrow, disrespected populist art of its time.
The penis jokes abound in those plays.
And it's just a bunch of people standing around a stage with guys dressed up as women making Twelfth Night is a series of gender jokes for like 2 hours. It's so strange that things can change so utterly in their context just because they remain in like the public brain for so long. It would be like if Family Guy or South Park was still talked about in 400 years, and it was something people dress up to, and then they go to like a big fancy red velvet theater to see a screening of.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the context it was made in.
Exactly.
And I hate that Shakespeare has that reputation now.
Yeah.
And there is that like snootiness expected of things like Jane Austen or Dickens or Sherlock Holmes, of course.
Right, yeah. Well, and that's the thing, all of this stuff, like things can be you can have a mystery or a thriller that's still intelligently written.
Sure.
You can have a romance that still has complex character things going on. That's what Jane Austen is.
Oh, yeah.
It's a romance. I mean,
they're also funny and accessible.
Jane Austen, I will say, Jane Austen is not just boy meets girl.
No.
They like each other. They have a conflict. They get together. There's a lot more going on. But that's what it all comes down to. And you're right. It's all entertainment. Literally, Sherlock Holmes is was serialized. It was like a weekly exciting chapter in this thrilling mystery. Like that's what it is. And I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, but it sucks that the way that how we view that now.
All of the
like
dry classics. Like Edgar Allan Poe died penniless, but was like a renegade for his time.
Yeah. Also, he like horror. He like master of horror. That's totally meant to just entertain and disgust you.
Yes,
like it's fun,
which is fine.
Let people like things that are fun.
If I can throw another tangent on this tangent that we're talking about now.
Of course.
I'm asking your perspective on this because I don't read many mysteries, and I also don't read or listen to or watch true crime stuff. Like you drag me into it, and I love Mindhunter more than I love anything.
Yeah.
It's a national tragedy that show isn't still going.
I know.
Fingers crossed for a revival for season 3.
Yeah, seriously.
Anyway, my point is about murder mysteries or, whatever kind of mystery, I guess, is told in these stories.
Yeah. Well, this one, it was a murder mystery.
My theory, and this is from someone who knows nothing about the genre,
great,
is that in 2021, for any sort of murder mystery to be interesting, it has to be a period piece.
No, it either has to be true crime, like a true story.
Even then, it should be the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
The Staircase. It's got to be old-timey.
No, true crime is best when it's in the 80s or previous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's got to be all
like,
foggy.
If I'm hearing about a story that happened in 2005, I'm like, eh.
So, like, I think, and the perfect example of this is probably Breaking Bad. Every time there's some sort of subterfuge, right, they all get burner phones from, like, a gas station, and the second they're done with the call, they snap it and throw it away.
Yeah, can't do that now.
But it's also right before there was like 1984 technology everywhere with cameras and finger scanners and trackers and blah, 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 facial scanner. Like, if you do a true crime thing in 2021, it is dystopian. It is, I mean, it's like a sci-fi nightmare because there's so much technology tracking everything.
Well, and I think what it comes down to overall, it's not just about technology and optics and aesthetics. I mean, the aesthetics help, but it's also about separating it from your own reality.
Yeah.
Like true crime is interesting and it's a bit separate from mystery, like obviously because it's real, but also because like true crime, a lot of people like it, especially women. And other people have talked about this plenty, but women like
true
it.
Crime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This idea. Women like it because it gives them an opportunity to think about the worst thing that could happen and how they would get out of it, like what they would do. It's basically like an education moment. I mean, the same way that horror allows us to live out. I mean, they were talking about this on Eli Roth's podcast the other day. Joe Hill was on. Yeah. Like, it allows you to live out the worst possibility and to think about what you would do in that situation and to see the options play out. And that's what true crime is. And so by having it in an older time, it removes you from it a bit, and so you're allowed to play out that fantasy, but not feel too close to home.
Because you need, if in the current age, my point about the technology was there's no mystery, there's no room for detective work because there's metadata for every step of the way.
Yeah,
so it's not fun. Like it sucks all of the fun and the misdirection and the clues and the dusting for
and so much of
fun.
And so much of the Sherlock stuff is that fun. It's like him sniffing a piece of paper and recognizing a perfume. It's him looking at a boot. It's all of that like fun, like analog detective work.
No, exactly. I've noticed as I get older, on the honeymoon, I read I read a ton of Batman comics.
Yeah,
I've always loved Batman since forever because I grew up on the Adam West Batman because of my mom.
Yeah,
and I still love him. And when you're a kid, the fights are the fun part, right?
Yeah.
Like the Adam West, the big pow, and the words like popping on the screen.
Yeah,
that's the fun part. The villains are cool. The Joker looks cool. As I get older, I love the ones with a great mystery because like Batman is the foremost DC property. DC versus Marvel, that whole thing.
Yeah,
DC stands for Detective Comics.
Oh, and I don't think I knew that.
The one that really got me recently. This is about a month ago. It's called The Long Halloween. It was just adapted into an animated set of 2 movies on HBO. It's like a seminal classic. It just had a little sequel. There are sequels to it. It's fantastic. And it's called The Long Halloween, and it was published monthly, like most comics are.
Yeah.
But the point is there's a killer who kills someone on each holiday in every month. So there are obvious holidays like Halloween.
That's so cool. What a great concept.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the cops know this. They know, I mean, as it gets into the other months, it's like really little
what is it,
holidays?
Like Memorial Day?
Right, so everyone has to
Mother's
be all
Day?
tensed and protective, and you don't know who it is, but you know someone is going to hit someone else on one of these holidays.
Cool.
And that mystery was so good, and it was Batman chasing him through like pure detective work. Mm-hmm. And I really loved the mystery of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the closest I've gotten to Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But it does ensnare part of your brain. It's not just like puzzle solving.
Yeah.
It's being part of the mystery. In that Palahniuk newsletter that I talked to you about, he mentioned submerging the eye. Meaning instead of saying I heard a bell ring, you say a bell rang.
Oh, nice.
So when you drop the character or that perspective and you just describe the action, you involve the reader.
Cool.
And you put it in their head. You make them complicit and involved.
Well, yes, and that I think is what is so successful about Watson here as the narrator. Him not having much of a personality, it allows you to sort of become Watson.
Sure.
It's similar, not quite the same, but similar to how like Bella is
I knew you were going to say
so
that.
boring in Twilight. It
By
allows,
design, though.
Yes, it allows you to imprint and like for there are like sections of the story where you forget that Watson is there because he's like saying, he's like observing a conversation. So for like 3 pages, there's dialogue going on among other characters, and they're like, oh yeah, Watson's still there, but like I felt like I was there because like Watson is just embodying this like very vague observer that you get to be in on. It's very cool.
And anytime a character expresses like your emotions, I remember I was talking to someone about Fantastic Beasts. I think it was my dad. After we saw the first one 100 years ago when that came out, and he was saying his favorite character was Jacob. Yeah, because everything in the magical world was new to Jacob. Yeah. And that was sort of the audience viewers, the audience goers, movie goers.
You're right there.
Perspective.
Well, and that's why 11-year-old Harry is so successful.
That's why all of our parents who went to those movies with us, they love the first 2 movies the most.
Right, because
it's all still new and magical.
Exactly, yeah. No, and this does that very, very successfully.
And I'm sure I'd be interested if you followed this up with some of the short stories because they're punchier, which means they're even more accessible and less twisty. They don't demand that longer attention span.
Yeah.
I'd love to know how engaging those are.
No, I'm so excited to read more of this. It's so much fun, and I don't know why I've slept on this for so long. I've always obviously have known about Sherlock, but I've never been like, I want to read those. It's more been like, I'll read those one day eventually, but like they're so much fun, and I am having a blast, and like I'd rather read this than fucking War and Peace. Like
I'd love to read War and Peace.
Me too, but like
if I read books,
I feel like I need to read more of this first before I open that big honking thing.
Sure.
So anyway, that's really all I have to say about this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and why don't we praise mystery and thrillers more? Because we should, because they're fun.
Gone Girl's still one of the best books I've ever read.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because of the puzzle. It's the combination of the horror thing of living out terrible scenarios and like kind of getting that catharsis out. And it's the fun part of the puzzle.
Yep.
And so it's like the 2 best things. That's why true crime is so fascinating to people. That's why mysteries and thrillers are fun. So anyway, and also for it being an old like thriller mystery that maybe, hasn't escaped cliches just yet. I still didn't guess the ending. Sure. I was surprised by the ending. It was excellent. So anyway.
That's great.
It's
great.
I'm
glad you liked it.
Huge delight. Highly recommend.
Great.
Go read Sherlock Holmes. It's fun.
The classics, we take them as assumptions. That doesn't mean that they're not exciting. That doesn't mean that they're boring.
I think I kind of assumed they were just going to be kind of boring, which
Right.
was dumb of me, especially because I like classic literature. I'm not one of those people that thinks it's boring.
You love Jane Austen. Read Shakespeare, read Dickens, read Mark Twain, read Dante.
Right.
Like, go back as far as you can.
Right. But also, like, read Karen Slaughter and, have a good time with modern fun genres.
This is true for everything, right? Like, the art that's being made while you're alive is 1/1000% of all the art that's ever been made. So even if you love some of the stuff that's coming out that happens to be in your movie theater or bookstore,
right,
the things you love the most will be in the past. Yeah. Statistically, there's just no... We started watching Seinfeld. I think that's why I said that like that.
In the past. Yeah.
But, the thing that has hit me as the biggest perfect sledgehammer of art in my entire life was published 400 years ago with Doctor Faustus.
Yes.
Like, hunt for that. It's the same with music. You're always on the hunt for like that perfect tone, or I like metal and guitar stuff.
Yeah.
And you're always hunting for the last perfect album, and it's all out there.
Oh yeah.
There are like thousands of books published every day now.
There's so much.
Don't ignore the past. Mine it.
Don't. Yeah, it's fun. Anyway, this was great. If you have any recommendations for like the best, like which Sherlock should I read next, what's a really good edition, because I'm all about cute editions of books, let us know.